bear with me, we have 2 more cars and 3 more teams to come. So that means 2 cars and 3 teams. So there's the next car out of the Stanford car manufacturing initiative. And I've Graham with me. Great to have you here. And I'd also like to read a little bit out of the first email contact that I had. Not exactly about this, but somewhat about this. And that is actually May last year, and that's about David. So when David and I met at Stanford XP, that most of you are probably familiar with, it's a design fair happening every year, actually early June at Stanford, and students show off what they are doing. And David and I, we chatted a little bit, and later on he sent me this email, and I think it's okay to read from this.
Sure.
That he's concerned that people use 2,500 pounds and 130 plus horsepower vehicles for trips that are under 10 miles. And he thinks that many innovative product offerings in transportation are technology-centric, and he thought that it should be about time to apply human-centric design methodology to vehicles. It's not exactly what we were talking about back then, so there were some ups and downs, and we had great discussions over the years. It was really great fun. And then actually, well, you were not there then, right? We met at a different thing over at the business school, which was a great thing as well. But then not the Solarcon students, what then became the WENG team knocked at my door. John is not here today, Karen's not here today, but Brian is there, Anthony's there, and David is there. Walked in my office, there was mid-April this year, and they said, okay, well here we are, we actually want to design a vehicle in 10 weeks. I said, well, I hear this sometimes, I mean not every day, but sometimes. Then they said, you know what, we really want to do this thing, what David actually proposed about a year earlier. And so I think now it's a little bit enough of my introduction. So what is it about, what does it mean if you actually design something that is more human-centric than other vehicles on the road?
So I think, before I get into that, the important thing to notice about this particular artifact is that this was conceived, designed, and built by 5 product design master's students in 10 weeks only. It's an all-electric vehicle, and it was built, for those of you that know Stanford, it was built in the PRL, the Product Realization Lab, over by the Design Loft. So this was their master's thesis project, and really what it was meant to do was not to play around with technology and say, hey, can we design a car? It was meant to solve a real human need, and that need was around short-range mobility. So how to get around town, how to do simple things, whether it's getting to and from your house to public transit, going over to your friend's house for a barbecue, going grocery shopping. These are things that weren't necessarily or aren't necessarily appropriate with the vehicles that we drive. So it was the design inspiration to design something that's more welcoming and appropriate for those low-range trips.
Great, Graham. And maybe at this point we should also say how you got on board, actually,
yeah.
which was kind of towards the end of the Design Masters project, and the students are still here. So what is all this about?
So Brian and I have known each other for a while, and when they presented their master's thesis, they were presented with a grant opportunity from Lightspeed Ventures. It runs an academic grant right up the road. And so what we're doing is we're taking the summer to figure out if there's a business around this, and trying to figure out how we can bring a vehicle like this to market. And as it turns out, there's a lot of interest.
So as far as I know, you are looking currently into target consumers, what is the target market and things like this. So we've also been discussing this quite a bit, like hotels and so on. Maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on this. Especially on the question that I was getting at a certain point from someone who then walked to my office late at night and said, well, I looked at the WENG today, and it's a golf cart.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Where do I put my golf clubs? So the interesting thing about this in comparison to a golf cart is a golf cart has a very specific design heritage. It was designed to carry 2 guys and their 2 golf bags. And every vehicle that's kind of come in that line still carries that heritage, even if it's used for, you know, a fleet vehicle around campus, and it has a really hard time breaking from that. And we see a lot of these fleet vehicles around campus, and we all still call them golf carts. And no matter how much fun you have on the golf course, you don't leave the golf course and say, I want to go buy one of those to drive around on the streets. So the inspiration here was to really say, how can we design this to fit real, everyday human needs? So, as we're looking at this field, actually, this vehicle with a couple of minor modifications is actually street legal. There is a classification, low-speed vehicles, that NHTSA has set across, and essentially it's legal everywhere but the highway. And so what we're looking at is how can we take this as our initial inspiration and really design this in a further iteration to be really appropriate for that market. And oddly enough, it's a $4.5 billion market. All these low-speed vehicles, half of which are owned privately by people. They're not fleet vehicles, they're not on golf courses. So we're looking at how can we design and bring to market a vehicle that really suits that need.
All right, great, thanks a lot. Maybe we should talk just briefly a little bit about the technology. So it looks like a handlebar, but it's not really a handlebar, right?
Yeah, so there's, when we started out this as a really human-centered design project, but it's got actually a little, some nice little pieces of technology. So it uses lithium iron phosphate batteries, uses a sophisticated modern battery management system. It also features a steer-by-wire system, so you'll notice there's no steering wheel. There's actually a little thumb joystick there, similar to what you'd find in a Nintendo Wii, and that basically powers a little smart motor that sits below that deck there and drives a rack and pinion. So other interesting features is that we've got two sets of hub motors, so the motors actually sit inside the rear wheel. So we basically eliminate the need for the whole drivetrain, and basically we have a lot more flexibility in designing a unique package and giving it a unique look.
Great, thanks a lot. And then I might just maybe want to conclude how the discussion ended back then when they walked into my office, and obviously they were asking for money and something like that. And I thought, well, there can be something. And so I decided, well, we are going to support them. We, in the end, means, and this is maybe a good time also to thank our sponsors for our program, which is Bosch, Honda, Nissan, Toyota, State Farm Insurance, and Volkswagen, for supporting our automotive program, and by this also to some extent supporting some great projects that students at Stanford actually can work on these automotive topics, not only on computers, also on real stuff. And also then take it maybe further with people from the business school and actually see if there's a there or not. But I'm sure there's one. Thanks a lot, the WENG team. All right, the next car.